Hello and welcome to the program this morning. I'm so glad you could join me wherever you are. I'll give a few moments for folk to join us, and we want to know where you're watching us from today. And we have got one incredible program. One of my favorite people in all the world is with us today, and there are people that I've met. I've been doing this for 51 years, and along with the normal flow of people that you meet, and someone comes along and sticks out and says, "Hey, my friend, today you are going to meet this man," and he has challenged me and blessed me more or as much as anyone I've ever met in my life. So I want you to stay tuned. Where are you watching from today? Let us know when you sign on, and let us know what city and country you're from. We are so thrilled. How many have been calling from or viewing from Scotland, and we've had from Australia and India and all kinds of places. We were just amazed. And so on your page, there's a share button. And if you hit that share button, or you can start a watch party, and by starting a watch party, if you invite other people, then your friends will get to watch the program today. And we're going to be talking about some really important things. And the Bible says, in the last days, perilous times shall come. And what you're going to hear today is something you may not even believe. I know most folk have not heard it because most of us are asleep. You are going to hear stuff today that will make you absolutely look and think, this is happening in America? This is going to blow your mind. And I urge you, contact your pastor just now, because this deals directly with the church and our freedoms in America. And you need to be aware of what you're going to hear today, because I've lived through this as a board member of this organization and this ministry. And it has astonished all of us that how the government finds a small issue and can literally try to find their way into every aspect of your ministry. It's mind-blowing. Bobby Riddell is watching us. Hey, Bobby, we love you in New York. Connie is watching us. God bless you, Connie. Darren is watching us, and Les is watching us. Vaughn, God bless you. I'm glad you could. Vaughn Oswald, another one of my favorite people. I love you, Vaughn Oswald, very, very much. And wherever you're watching us from, hit the share button if you could, and let folk know that you're going to be watching something that will enlighten you. Paula and Cynthia and Marlon is watching us. And wherever you're watching us from, I just pray that you are living in Jesus, because I'll tell you what, the only hope, the only place to be anchored right now is on the Rock of Ages, the Lord Jesus, because everything else we're living in is sinking sands. What's blowing my mind, I was speaking the other day, yesterday I was in Florida speaking at church. And we are normally, in the old days, in the good old days last year, a news cycle would last for a week or 2 weeks, and you live in this news cycle. What's happening just now in the world, and in America in particular, is the news cycle, instead of being 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's hours, and it's like a tsunami hits, and then another tsunami hits, and then another tsunami hits. We finished here on Friday, and over the weekend, that terrible events once again in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Jerry Bernard, we love you guys so much, praying for your health in Jesus' name. And we love you and Sandy so very, very much. Marvin and Sandy from Tennessee is watching also, and Trish. We're so glad you could join with us and stick with us. You're going to learn a lot, Jerry, today of what's going on, and you'll be amazed at the attack of the enemy that's taking place. But what's happening is, here we are now, and we finished last week, and the riots were in New York City and Minnesota and Seattle. They've got their own country of 6 blocks in Seattle. And that was what was the news on Friday. Here we are Monday, weekend of riots in Atlanta. And I mean, it's literally, it seems like the earth is convulsing right now. The earth is groaning, and the scripture speaks of that. So I just urge every one of you today to be aware of what's going on. And my friend that's going to join us in a few moments is going to blow our minds with what he is experiencing and what the ministry he's part of is experiencing right now. You will not believe what you're going to hear. And you need to share this right now with as many people as you can, especially your pastor. Your pastor needs to understand and hear what we are about to talk about, because this will affect your church. This will affect your ministry. If this thing keeps going the way it's going, I'm telling you, I'm living this. I'm in the middle of this. I don't talk about it very much, but this is serious stuff. Wendy, I hope that's my mom. Is that my mom? No, it's not my mom. Okay, my mom's name is Wendy. Edwin and Gregory and Bonnie and Marina Bobicelli. Marina, I don't know, Marina was one of our very first kids in Moldova, and she now lives in Paris, and I love you very much, Marina. I enjoy looking at all your posts that you do. And Tom Nolan is watching us right now from TCT, and we love you, Tom. And you need to watch this program. You need to watch this program, I'm telling you, for TCT's sake. And because we are talking just now about religious freedom and what the government is doing or attempting to do to the church. And you will be astonished and mad, I hope mad, when you listen to what we're going to talk about today. So this is a really important program. I'm so glad you could join us. We're so glad you are part of our lives. Welcome to Daily Faith. Welcome back, and I don't waste any more time. Let's get into this issue right now, because we are facing, whether you know it or not, a crisis of freedom in America. All the noise you're seeing about and all the noise you're hearing just now has an ulterior motive, a bigger motive than what you're hearing. And that is they want to get conservative thought, and they want to get the church stymied and limited in its power. They resent the church and the ministries of the church for the freedom that we have gained over the centuries in America. And they want to limit us and regulate us just like normal corporations. And that is what is at risk. Years ago, I received a call from an old friend of mine, Jim Bakker. He had an amazing ministry in Charlotte, and we were there continuously, and situations happened and the whole thing fell apart. Jim ended up in prison for 5 years. What people don't know is that Alan Dershowitz looked at his case and for free approached the court and got his convictions overturned, and Jim Bakker, instead of spending 45 years or 40 years, got out after 5 years, a free man. The news didn't tell that part. They only loved the scandal part. And to my amazement, when most folk would have said, I'll just go on a speaking tour, I'll write a couple of books, and I'll live in retirement, Jim Bakker decided to start again. And one of the main reasons why he started again, you're about to meet him. And this kid, this young man from LA, I'm going to get him to tell you his story, because it's the craziest story you've ever heard in your life. Was used by God to go into a dark room in the Dream Center in Los Angeles and get Jim Bakker out of his despair and his bed and say, I'm coming back for you tomorrow. You better get ready. Or 1 o'clock this afternoon, I think, if I recall the event correctly. And Mondo, it has become a lifelong friend of mine. I love him, and I love his wife. I love his kids. I love everything about this man. And so when we're talking today, I would like to hear input from you. That comment bar, get mad with us, because you're going to hear stuff that's going to blow your mind. And I am so thankful to have Mondo join us today. Mondo, how are you doing, my brother?
Hello, Uncle Philip, the old man.
Oh, stop it. All Jim Bakker's kids, including Mondo, they call me Uncle Philip. Now it makes me feel like Uncle Henry from the PTL Club, and
Yeah.
he used to fall asleep on the set all the time. So I don't know if they're doing it because they love me or they're doing it because they're making fun of me. I've still got to ascertain that. But Jim Bakker has been a lifelong friend of mine. I met him first when I was 13 years of age, and I'm 65.
Wow.
And he has been derided and laughed at and mocked for everything that he isn't. You talk about falsely accused and falsely misunderstood. Jim Bakker is the perfect example of that. And when he came back and decided to try again, I was on his program in those days, and one day I got a phone call and he says, "You wouldn't want to come on a TV with an old failed preacher, would you?" And I says, "Jim, I've been waiting for your phone call." And it's been my high honor to stand beside him and believe with him and in him, to watch all the things that he lost being restored. It is a miracle. It is a saga and an epic of redemption. And Mondo, you have been a great part of this. How on earth did a gang leader? Which gang were you? Which gang were you part of in LA?
I don't want to say the name of the gang.
Okay.
It's pretty big.
It's
the second.
named after.
Yeah, it's the second largest gang in the world right now.
It's named after a street, if I recall.
Yes, sir. And
I
was responsible for my area, and I was involved in probably one of the most notorious gangs in Los Angeles County. And
Amazing.
my whole life revolved around building that gang.
Yeah.
But there's three powerful statements that changed my life. That a young girl, my sister, walked up to me and decided to walk into my world and challenged me with three statements. One being, what if God is real? What if prayer works? And what if you have a different destiny? Those three things changed my life forever.
Amazing.
I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in prayer. And for sure, I didn't believe I had a destiny. As a matter of fact, I believe that by the time I was 18 years old, I was supposed to die. I didn't have any plans after 18 years old. I didn't have a plan if I made it after, because I knew that all of my friends, which we call them homeboys, all of my homeboys, all of my homegirls that were dying before they hit 18 years old. So I knew I was next. But those three powerful statements that my sister said to me changed my life forever, because it made me wonder, what if God is real? Where are you, God? And if you are real, I have a few questions. In the form of asking questions is prayer. So then I began to realize after prayer that maybe I do have a different destiny. The streets told me you're going to die before 18, or you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. So don't plan after that. And this is before, gangsters became commercial, meaning before they started hitting social media, before they started being on TV. It wasn't popular to be a gangster. It wasn't popular to, as a matter of fact, I had a motto. Every business has a motto. And one of the mottos I used to recruit young men and women was, we live to die and die to live for the gang. And that became a purpose that drove us to build one of the largest gangs in the world. And, East LA was notorious for crime. And I didn't have a clue who Jim Bakker was. I didn't have a clue what church was all about. I didn't have a clue what organized religion was all about. All I knew is that, the Catholic Church was there. And the Catholic Church was probably my closest extension to God and religion, but I wasn't interested in even getting involved on anything that had to do with Christianity or being a Catholic or anything. I wore my rosary all the time for protection. I have the sign of the praying hands. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
Always trying to believe in faith, but I only have faith for the streets, and I only have faith that we had the power. And I had another motto that said, because I can. Why are you doing that? Because I can. And then it became even more passionate after I found Christ, because I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. And you know what? That became one of the pillars of my life. And when I repented and when I came to the Lord, and there was an old hymn. You love old hymns, Uncle Philip? I love old hymns, man. I like the new worship music and all that, but there's nothing like old hymns.
Nothing.
And when I walked into a church, and the story's so long, but I'm skipping over, but there was a song, there was a hymn. I was all the way in the back, inside of a church, inside of a service that my sister had asked me to join. And I told her I can't be seen in the church. If I'm seen inside of a church, my reputation is going to go down. If I go inside of a church and my homeboys or my enemies see me in there, I'm going to lose all the respect and credibility from the streets. Yeah. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I used to say this all the time. Love and weakness as a matter of fact, love and compassion is a weakness of a warrior.
Wow.
And if I show love and compassion, that was the weakness of a warrior, and they were going to use that against me. And because I've used it against my enemies, I used it against, people that were trying to hurt me and all this crazy things that goes on the streets. But I wore my lokes on. I had a bandana on. I had my white t-shirt, big baggy pants, my Nike Cortez, and I had 2 pistols in my waist. And I said, if anybody recognizes me, they're not going to go back and tell anybody, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And when I was at the back of that church in that service, this pastor was one of my worst enemies and had become a pastor and became saved. And all of a sudden, he began to preach like I've never heard anyone preach about a guy named Jesus, and how he took a beating for doing nothing. He went to die on the cross. You know the story. And I've never heard a story put in that form. And there was a song, a hymn that began to play. At the cross, where I first saw the light.
And the burdens
it was in Spanish still.
Roll away.
En la cruz, yo primero vi la luz, y los pecados de mi alma Elsa. When I heard those words, Hallelujah. Uncle Philip, and I heard the hymn,
Hallelujah.
Tears for the first time. The last time I cried was when I was 5 years old, when my father walked away. All my emotions, I had a black heart, I had an angry heart, I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove to my father in any way, shape, or form that I can make it without him.
Yeah.
I grew up with no feelings. I didn't have emotions inside of me. I didn't care for anyone. I can care less if you were dying on the street. I would step over you. I had no compassion. I didn't care for life. Because survival mode, if you're living in survival mode, there's no way you can live with emotions in your heart and trying to survive in the streets of LA. But that night, on Saturday night, for the first time since I was 5 years old, I began to have emotions, and I began to feel compassion like I never had it in my whole entire life. And the tears, and I began to ask God, I need you. There's got to be more to what I'm doing. There's got to be more to life than money. There's got to be more to life than cars. There's got to be more to life than women. There's got to be more to life than power. It wasn't about the money. It was about the first time I felt peace, and I could not explain what that peace was like, and it felt like fire up and down. But that long version of that I'm trying to give you, that moment set me up.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what God wanted with me. All I knew was the streets. All I knew was to make money in the streets and invest it back in real estate and be able to set up our neighborhood to take care of our people, the immigrant people, and be able to get people to fit into a society that was rejecting us. Yeah. And, my mother was born in California, and she passed down the citizenship down to my sister and I. We are U.S. citizens, but I had to roam around the streets of L.A. like I was an immigrant, because if people knew I was a U.S. citizen, they were going to use that against me. So I had to go
Unbelievable.
under a different code. And I want to tell you something. The people in the streets are people that are wanting to be heard, people that are angry, people that are, we have been treated unkind
Yeah.
and been ignored. And therefore, you see the results of that today. But that's going to change because I believe in a God that is a just God, and there
Yes.
has to be justice with order. And we'll talk about that later on what's happening around our nation. But what took place that Saturday night led me to ask God, what do you want from me, God? Where do you want me to go? And I began to serve. And I tell people this: if you want God to use you, you learn how to serve first.
Yeah.
Don't go out
Absolutely.
trying to travel the world and preach around the world and build great churches if you haven't learned to serve first.
That's the truth.
And I began to serve at the Dream Center in Los Angeles with Pastor Tommy Barnett and Matthew Barnett. They became my mentors. They became good friends. And I even made it to Pastor Tommy's book, his latest book,
Well,
What
you are
If?
famous.
And no, God, no. Listen, but that led me to understand what Christianity was all about.
Yeah.
And one Thursday night, the man that you talked about, Jim Bakker, I never heard of him. I had no clue who he was. As a matter of fact, all I knew is that he had been to prison. And I felt connected immediately. Oh, he's one of us.
That wild. Is that crazy?
you know,
Wow.
and his credentials being in prison allowed me to get close to him. And
It's
Pastor
amazing.
Tommy asked me, I want you to go pick him up, drive him around. And, Pastor Tommy and Matthew trusted me with his guests. I drove his top guests around. I took care of them. And, that meant a lot to me because in the past, no one could trust me.
Sure.
And the fact that this two men trusted me with important people, all I wanted to do, Uncle Philip, was just serve God. And I wanted to thank God for having mercy and grace in my life. And I would
Yeah.
do anything. As a matter of fact, before I even started getting paid in the ministry, I volunteered for 5 years because I
Yeah.
didn't want it to be about the money. I wanted it to be a Thanksgiving offering for my life
And Mondo,
that God had
that
grace.
that is one of the great misconceptions about Jim Bakker's life. The last thing that he or any of those around him are motivated by is money. And
Oh, man.
it blows my mind that the devil takes that lie and plants it in the
Yes.
church's brain, never mind the world's brain. And it's one of the biggest. Jim Bakker is one of the most generous, giving men I've ever met in my life. He doesn't have a greedy
Absolutely.
bone in his body. And yet,
None.
that's what the world would like to beat him with. Tell me how you finally got to meet Jim Bakker. This is a fascinating story.
So I went to go pick him up at the airport. He was on his tour for his book, I Was Wrong.
Yeah,
And as a matter of fact, if you haven't read I Was Wrong,
it's
I urge
amazing.
you, for every young pastor, every
Absolutely,
old pastor, every middle-aged pastor, every evangelist, it is the history
absolutely.
of the modern church
Yes,
to understand the highs and the lows of how to build a ministry and what the challenges that you go through. So he
absolutely.
was doing his book tour on about I Was Wrong, and he was stopping by the Dream Center to give a message. Every Thursday night, Pastor Tommy has some of the world's biggest influential guests come by and share a special sermon. And Pastor Jim came in and he dropped a message that I will never forget. I can still remember the title, God Can Still Use Broken Dreams. And I remember this man walking up to the stage. Now, granted, by this time, I had already been picking up very famous people and very pompous people and people that they felt like they deserved to be on stage.
Yeah,
When Jim Bakker
I
walked up
know
to the
them.
stage, it was like a puppy dog. He had a hat with his hat was all the way down, would not speak to anybody, very shy, very scared, shaking.
Wow.
And finally, in the middle of his sermon, he said, how many of you been in prison? and about 80% of the congregation stood up and raised their hands. And he said,
Oh,
"This is my crowd." And from that moment on, he preached like he never preached before. When he came down the stage, and I never do this with any guest because I respect my boundaries, and I put my arm around Jim, not knowing who he was. And I said, "I love you, man. I've been where you've been. You're going to be all right." I never knew that those words were going to link us up 22 years later.
amazing.
And Jim called Pastor Tommy and said, "I want to move to the Dream Center. I want to serve people. I don't want to preach. I don't want to stage. I want to serve." And Pastor Tommy said, "Jim, that is the greatest decision you can ever do." And when Pastor Jim came to the Dream Center, he lived in a place called Casa Grande, where about 10 pastors from the church were living in. And Pastor Tommy and Matthew had given me a room in there, even though I wasn't a pastor. They saw something in me that I couldn't see for myself. And they
Yeah.
told me, "You're going to be used by God to help Jim. And we just want you to be there. Take care of him."
Yeah.
And every day we will have dinner and breakfast. And I noticed that Pastor Jim was not coming down to eat. And I read his book, by the way, in 2 days. I was wrong. I got familiar, studied who he was. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a man like I've never met before. This is a world shaker, literally. A
Yeah.
man that changed a generation in Christianity for the 20th century. And here I am. He's my roommate next door, and he's not coming down to eat. Something is wrong. And I knocked on his door, and I said, "Mr. Jim, are you gonna eat?" And he would say, "No, please leave me alone. I don't want to talk to anybody." I said, "Okay, that's okay." I come back the next day. I knock again. "Mr. Jim," I said, "it's time to eat. We would like to invite you. Would you like to come down and eat?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Please leave me alone, Mondo. I don't want to be around people." By the second day, I knew something was wrong. This is not normal. And by the third day, I broke in. I owe Pastor Tommy a lock, but I broke in and I felt like this man was dying of depression. This man was heartbroken. He had a broken
Unbelievable.
heart. And when I walked in, the room was dark. No light was coming through. He was just laying in his bed and would not even smile. I turned the lights on and I said, "Mr. Jim, you're in LA. LA is one of the best cities in the world, man. It never rains. It's always shining. Let's go out." And he says, "Please leave me alone. I don't want to be around people. You don't understand." And I said, "Mr. Jim, there's 3 things that I read in your book that you love. One is window shopping. Number 2 is building. Number
Building,
3, you like taking baths." And I said, "I'm going to turn the bath on and we're going to go window shopping and I'm going to take you to where they're building the Union Station in East LA. I said, I want you to get out." And she says, "No, I don't want to go. Please leave me alone." And I looked at him and I said, "Mr. Jim," I said, "I'm going to come back in 30 minutes. And if you haven't got in that bath, I'm going to carry you and bathe you myself like you were my own father."
Wow.
And he kind of, his smile kind of broke. And I said, "Oh, you got feelings. That's good. You're still alive." And I said, "I'm going to come back in 30 minutes. And quite frankly, I don't want to wash a grown man." But in 30 minutes, I came back, Uncle Philip. He was ready to go. I can still smell his cologne, which is Safari. And I will never forget that smell because it was the smell of life.
Amazing.
And it was the smell that he said, "I'm going to trust this young man. I don't know who he is. All I know is that he's an ex-gang member and his gang had been involved in a lot of crimes, but I'm going to trust him." From that moment on, I took Pastor Jim around and I drove him to the beach. I took him to the movies. I took him to Chinatown. I took him to every East LA, to go get to know a different culture where no one will recognize him.
Yeah.
So start building his faith. And every Saturday morning, we will go out on the streets. And this is a man that most people don't realize who he is. all they know about Jim Bakker is that he raises money. All they know about Jim Bakker is what the
Yeah.
tabloids and the media said. But this is a man that went on the streets every day in Los Angeles for 2 years to serve the people without asking for one penny for 2
Not
years,
2 minutes,
every
2
single
years.
day.
Yes.
2 years. He canceled almost every speaking engagement, and he said, in order for me to go back to where I think God is going to call me to do, I must serve the people first. And he served the community for 2 years, and I think we would have stayed there forever, but he felt like there was a greater calling in his life. Then Mama Lori came along 6 months later.
And Jim met Lori on the streets while they were both ministering. This is things people don't know. Jim Bakker was released from prison because Alan Dershowitz pleaded his case and won and got him out of prison early. Billy Graham took him to stay with him in his house. The first time Jim went to church, Ruth Graham walked him down the aisle and sat him in the Graham pews in their church. And he went to the Dream Center, met Mondo, met Lori, while Jim was on the streets witnessing and ministering to people in need. So people always judge. I'm so tired of people judging a book by its covers, and they have no clue, no understanding of all the things and all the miracles and the heartache that have come together to knit this man back together again. And when he called me, Mondo, you were working with him in Branson by this time, and he called and he says, will you come on the TV with a broken preacher? It was the greatest honor of my life. And I have committed myself, and I'm on his program all the time. And my joy has been to watch God restore the dream in Jim Bakker. And at the same time, if you've never been to Morningside in Branson, you are missing a trip, I'm telling you. It is crazy. God has given him back everything that he's lost with a totally different spirit. It's amazing what's happened there. And that leads me, Mondo. Jim's ministry is in a tremendous battle right this minute. It's a ridiculous battle. It's a false battle. Just for the sake of clarity, I'm on Jim Bakker's board, so I am privy to a lot of things that go on behind the scene. I wouldn't be on Jim Bakker's board if I thought for 1 second anything was amiss. Not for a second would I be on that board. I know how much Jim Bakker makes. I know exactly where he lives and what he does and how it's done. And if you knew the whole story, you would not believe the sacrifices guy has made in his life. And so it all started with a program with Jim speaking about a product that I've used and many other folk have used. It helps your immune system. It's great for infections. It's all that stuff. And the government is saying that a claim was made that wasn't made, because I've heard the tape. Give us the outworking of that one program.
Absolutely. We were discussing the support to the immune system, and everyone that watches the Jim Bakker Show knows that Pastor Jim, that loves to get people prepared.
Absolutely.
For the end times, for emergency. We provide survival food, which is emergency food, water filtration, and we talk about the book of Revelation and where we are with the headlines and how they align together. But also another passionate thing that the ministry is all about is helping people to be healthy, to get their life in order, nothing out of the ordinary. This product had been part of our lives for 10 years now. And so it was normal talking about, the product that supports your immune system and be able to support your some of the conditions that it treats, right? But this is the thing. It doesn't treat bad things. It doesn't treat it. We don't claim anything. We didn't make one claim. No. But because the topic of COVID-19 was just starting, they felt like it was misleading to the viewer. But if you watch the program, or the Dr. Cheryl Selman never said and never claimed that,
Did
it
not.
was the cure for COVID-19. Now, this product had been tested for other strains of flus and all that stuff,
Yeah.
of the coronavirus type of situation, but never did Pastor Jim or Dr. Shel Selman said that this product treated, cured, or was
Never
the
once.
key
Nope.
to heal COVID-19. Well,
Nope.
what happened was an organization called, I can't even remember, I blocked them out of my brain. This organization started a petition to cancel, to have the Jim Bakker Show cancel and taken down from every platform that carries the program.
The
That
cancel culture.
means Daystar, exactly, the cancel culture.
Yep.
And I call them the cancel vultures.
Yeah.
And
That's more accurate.
this vultures decided to start a petition to send to DirecTV, AT&T, Daystar, all of CTN, World Harvest, Golden Eagle Network, and pressuring them to take Jim Bakker's show out and
Unbelievable.
not air it for making false claims that we have the cure for COVID-19. So the pressure started, began to take place. All of a sudden, the FDA, all of a sudden, the attorney generals from New York, Missouri, Arkansas, California, and one of the things is this: the FDA and the attorney generals, they didn't contact us first. We had to find out through the media that they had made, accusation towards us, demanding that we cease to, cease to desist or something like that.
Cease and desist.
Cease and desist.
Yeah.
The product and all that. So we found out through the media, along with y'all, with you guys, that they were making these threats to us. And then a friend of mine sent me an email saying that a petition was going around to cancel the Jim Bakker Show. And we immediately gathered together. But this is the thing, people. This has nothing to do with the product.
No.
This has nothing, because if it was about the product, you have to understand Walmart carries the product, Amazon carries the product, Walgreens carries the product, CVS carries the product. If it was about the product, how come they didn't go after those people?
Exactly.
How come they didn't go after those corporations? Simple. It has nothing to do with the product. It has to do with the fact that our religious freedom to silence a voice that has an influential ability to go into your home, to talk to you about issues that most people don't want to talk to you about because they're afraid of what people are going to say.
Yes.
And what they're trying to do right now is attack our religious freedom in a way that most churches and most pastors are not aware of right now.
That is true.
Let me just read you a headline of one of the reasons why they're wanting to silence the Jim Bakker Show. They want to silence Jim Bakker. Now, by the way, Jim Bakker has always been an easy target. And back in the 80s, late 80s, they came against him and no one stood up for him. Very few people stood up publicly.
Yeah.
Privately, I'm sure he got a lot of calls. Privately, people stood with him. But publicly, in the public square, is where it matters right now. And if you can stand together publicly, then the way to take you down won't be as easy. Because if they can see the numbers linking up together and understanding that the power's in the numbers, then the pushback is a lot harder from them to come by. But this is the headline: uproar as Arkansas AG tells church hand over name, addresses, donation details of congregation.
Unbelievable.
What's at stake right now? What's at stake right now is the attack on the religious freedom, and they're wanting to use the Jim Bakker Show and Morningside USA as an example of how they're going to treat the rest of the 501c3 churches, nonprofits, ministries. And this is what they're trying to do. They are wanting the church, they are wanting us to hand over your information. So if you have donated to the Jim Bakker Show, if you have donated to the ministry in some shape or form, then they want your address. They want to know how much money you have donated to our ministry. They want all of the details that concerns you. This is about you wanting your personal
Absolutely.
information through
Absolutely.
us, and they think that we were just going to hand it over. Well, that's against the Constitution that we stand for. We are not going to let them come after your donation, your information, and we are trying to protect you, the viewer or partners, the people that have stood with us. And the fight has to go into the legalities, unfortunately, to let them know that we are not going to just roll over and let them walk all over the church. This is far greater than what most pastors are wanting to pay attention to. Now, this is one of our lawyers is Jay Nixon of Missouri. And Jay Nixon is a Democrat. What a sweet man. As a matter of fact, one of our board members that you know is good friends with this man.
Yes.
And he said, will you represent Pastor Jim in the ministry? Because they're in a battle that is unfair, and he needs good lawyers to be able to fight this battle for him. This is what Jay Nixon said, and I quote, "It's extremely disturbing that this is happening in America, and especially in the state of Arkansas," said Bakker's attorney Jay Nixon, former governor and attorney general of Missouri. "It's very dangerous and sinister overstep when the government demands the names, addresses, and personal financial information of church members. This is what got me. It could be your church next."
Mondo, let me tell you something. Law lives in precedent. Whenever they check the law, they go back to see if there is a precedent set that they can then say the 1826 law case regarding da-da-da versus so-and-so, this was the ruling, and because of that ruling applied there, this is a similar situation, therefore the ruling is the same there. What this is about, and listen to me, pastor, listen to me, minister friend, what they are trying to do is to set a precedent, and they have perceived through this crazy deal with this product that they've got their nose in the door, and they are trying to set a precedent to make a Christian organization. Now, let me explain what maybe most people don't understand. Jim Bakker is called Pastor Jim long before this happened, because at Morningside there is a church that meets regularly. They have more church services. Listen to me. There are more church services at Morningside than any normal church in America. It is a church ministry. We've all been put on social media. Churches are doing all their services by social media. The pastors are saying to their congregants, why don't you give your tithes and offerings? What you're doing as a pastor on social media is what Jim Bakker's been doing on television for years and years. It may have a slightly different format, but it is the gospel, it is the church reaching the church and sharing the gospel and our like faith. That is what Jim Bakker does. That is what all the other Christian ministry do, and they've just used the media. And because of COVID, you now understand much more, because your church is doing the same thing as Jim Bakker's been doing for years. What this is about is this. They are trying to make this church organization, Morningside Church, Jim Bakker is his head pastor. There are other pastors that work. Brother Campbell, I believe, is one of the pastors that works in the ministry. What they are trying to do, now listen to me, they are trying to make this ministry give your name and address to the government and tell the government how much money you gave the church. You. And if they can set a precedent with this case, every church in America, the moment that you step out of their line, whatever they think they will come in against you, and they will go to the judge and say, well, let's quote this thing against Morningside, and we won that case, and we think this is similar, therefore we want to do the same thing again here. And the liberty that men have died for generations is about to be taken away from us without a whimper. Listen to me, church. We have been shut down by the government for months and months. Reason, I don't know, yes or no. Some say yes, some say no. I'll leave that to your own conscience. But what I'm saying is that the government mandated that the church stop, arrested people, fined people for going to church, while thousands of people loot and riot on our streets, and the police are abandoning cities to let lawlessness reign. And the church, me, you, are sitting down and saying, oh, this is terrible. I'm telling you now, my friend, you need to be heard. If you love Jesus, this thing started with a product as an excuse and ends up with your data being owned by the government, that you are a Christian, that you gave X amount of money to Morningside Church, and they own you at that point. And you need to stand. I'm hearing a hymn. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner. It must not suffer loss. And what happened? So, okay, Mondo, tell us the commercial aspect, the giving aspect, how that crippled your ministry.
Wow. I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of people are asking what happened.
This is insane.
And this is what every pastor, every evangelist, every person that has a ministry needs to understand, that if you think for 1 second that your credit card processing is safe, you better think again. I pray that you are using a Christian, honest Christian organization that will process your credit cards the way people are giving today. As a matter of fact, most people are giving through credit cards because they don't use checks anymore. We were dependent on credit cards, just like you guys are.
Yeah.
And when this people started seeing the headlines and the false accusations that came from every direction,
the credit card companies.
So the credit card companies started getting scared on all the headlines and all the false accusations and all this, everything that went wildfire on Jim Bakker and the ministry. They got scared, and what they did is they froze. I guess I'm allowed to say,
sure.
We said it before on the Jim Bakker show, they froze over $1 million of the people's donation is still frozen in the credit card processing right now. So if you wonder why you haven't received if you haven't received your product,
yes.
If you haven't received a notification on why your donation went through, well, we never received your donation for the product that you ordered that day. So it was frozen. They froze the accounts.
You hear what Mondo's saying? So the credit cards, the companies that process your credit card donations to Morningside and Jim Bakker program, they listen to rumor, use the rumor as an excuse to freeze more than I know it's more than what it's more than $1 million of ministry money given by Christians to a ministry, and they have frozen that money, haven't given the money that's due to the church ministry. And because of that, they can't fulfill the orders and the processing of whatever the gift is for. And no one can give to their ministry anymore through credit cards. So the Jim Bakker program in Morningside Church has had to depend on checks. The old-fashioned writing a check and sending it, or you can call an 800 number and give a bank check over the phone. But the credit cards have been stopped because the credit card company listened to the false accusation that the government is making. You see, here's the demonic thing. Here's the demonic thing. They have no timeline. They can lose you in the process of law and kill you by starving you to death so that you can't get the income to keep going, and then you don't have the money to fight them, and because you can't afford to pay the lawyers that know how to fight them, and they know if they can starve you long enough, they'll get what they want without having to actually do anything. You just won't be there anymore. Oh dear, what a pity. And that's what is happening as we speak in America today.
Yes.
To the church.
Listen, you know how powerful this is, Uncle Philip, and I want you guys to really understand that if you're a Christian and you're conservative, we are the target right now.
My God, yes.
And if they're going to silence you, and the first thing they're going to go after is they're going to smear your name all over the news and all over the headlines, all over social media. They're going to try to discredit you so fast that people won't want to do business with you. People won't want to donate to your ministry. People won't want to stand with your ministry. The second thing they will do is they will come after your donations. Number two, which is important to understand, when they come after your donation and they freeze a way to process on the way people are giving and donating to your ministry, then that will bankrupt you so fast. That will put you in a paralyzation mode. We only had 2 weeks before we have to close shop. We couldn't process it. We're not a ministry that puts money away and we're filthy rich. No, we have Lori's House we operate. We have a pantry. We have a church. We have a thrift store. We have the Morningside School of Media, everything. We pay the TV stations. We pay our employees. We give to missions. We give to your mission, Orphan Hands.
Absolutely.
I mean, the ministry only had 2 weeks worth of funds in order to operate and continue the operations before we can close shop. When we made a call to our partners and our viewers to please write in a check or to use cash, I do an electronic check if they're going to use the 800 number. And the response of the people is so overwhelming that they're standing with Pastor Jim and Lori. The friendship is there. I want you to know something. The reason why you're watching the Jim Bakker Show still on the air today is because it's a miracle. Every day is a miracle that we're on. Every week that we make it is a miracle. And I want to tell you something. If we don't stand together now, this has nothing to do with Jim Bakker. This has to do that our religious freedom as a whole is at jeopardy right now. I want to read you a headline. If you don't believe me, this is what you have to understand. While the church is being entertained to join a social club and a social justice club in order to be politically correct, I might even get in trouble for that statement, but it's all right. Most churches today and most pastors are entertained trying to be politically correct to try to fit into this culture. This is what the governors, liberal governors, are sending a message to you, the conservative people, right now. Let me read it to you. Governor Cuomo. So if you're pro-life, pro-gun, conservative, you have no place in New York City. He says the problem is not me and the Democrats. Their problem is themselves. Jesus. Who are they? Are they this extreme conservatives who are right to life, pro-assault weapons, anti-gay? Is that who they are? Because if that's who they are, and they are the extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York, because that's not who New Yorkers are all about. And you may say, well, I'm never going to New York. It's not about New York, people. It's about the fact that they are being clear.
Yeah,
absolutely. They're being very, very clear and direct. They're not trying to hide it anymore. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. When they come after you, when they come after your church, when they start using ways to shut you down financially, when they're using the power that they think of the Constitution that they have to take your religious freedom away. Now, if you think they're not monitoring your online services, you're asleep. If you don't think they're collecting data on every sermon and every time you go on Facebook Live, then you're sleeping under a rock. All the data that is being collected when you do a church service live stream, when you go on Facebook, when you put
everything is being collected.
Every word that you're standing up against that is considered hate speech because of this book because of the Bible, you are going to be held accountable. And what they're trying to do right now is to be able not only to smear you, have a smearing campaign, get petitions going. As a matter of fact, Skywatch TV started a petition to SaveJimBakkerShow.com. I
Yeah,
want you to
listen,
go there right now.
it's on there. We've just posted it right now. And if you want to help, if you want to stand with the church, forget Jim Bakker. This is not about Jim Bakker. This is not about a product. This is about freedom of religion in America. And you can sign the petition. It's www.SaveJimBakkerShow.com. And you go there, and I would love to see 1 million people. I'd love to see
Absolutely.
1 million Christians say, don't you touch the church. Don't you touch the church. I don't care if you're Roman Catholic. Let me tell you, to my Catholic friends, you believe the part of the faith of the Catholic Church is that when you have communion, the wafer and the wine turns to the body and blood of Jesus. That's one of the tenets of the Roman Catholic Church. Do you know that if they want to fight you on that, they can fight you on that? Mm-hmm. We Pentecostals believe in oil, putting oil on. What medical claims are you claiming then? Are you claiming that if you put oil on someone's head, they're going to be healed? Is that what you believe in your church? That's false. That's false advertising. I mean, guys, they can get in and they can start on you and they can bankrupt you. And the only safety we have is in the body of Christ coalescing around each other and saying, on Christ's solid rock we stand, all of the ground is sinking sand. And if I were you, I'd be going to that what is it, Mondo, again?
SaveJimBakkerShow.com.
SaveJimBakkerShow.com, and you can just there's a couple of things you can fill in to sign their petition.
Absolutely. Very
and by
easy,
doing
very
so,
simple.
You are doing something today to let your voice be heard in this horrendous, false, crazy deal. Crazy deal. But folk are responding and giving, and they're giving by check, etc. And you can give if you want to send an offering today to Jim Bakker, and say we want to stand with this show because this is wrong. This is principally wrong. You can do that by giving to the Jim Bakker Show, and the snail mail way to do it is P.O. Box 7330, Branson, Missouri 65615. And leave it up there for a few moments and write that piece of paper, write it down and just say, I'm just standing with you. Maybe the one-time gift you'll ever make in your life, but I'll tell you what you're doing. You're standing up for something. And that's what the church needs to do. We were closed down for 3 months by the government. They says, hey, stop, and we all stopped. Unheard of in the history of America. And it showed me that if they want to, you talk about the mark of the beast, they control your credit card purchases if they want to, because they've just done it with this organization. They've stopped people giving where they want to give. It's not fair and it's not right. And I urge you today to stand up. Pastor, if you're watching me, this can be your church tomorrow. This can be your church tomorrow. Go ahead, Mondo.
Absolutely. And that's their whole goal, is to go after the whole entire evangelical community, Christian community, pastors, nonprofit organizations. And since they thought Jim Bakker is an easy target, we're going to start with him.
Yeah.
But I want you to know something. We are probably in one of the most prophetic times in the history of humanity. And we need the voice of the prophets more than ever.
Absolutely.
We need people warning and watching. If you don't believe me, having a watchman on the wall is so important because they can foresee the future on what's coming. I'm reading a book right now, Uncle Philip, that I think you need to get. It's called God and Churchill: How Great Leaders' Sense of Divine Destiny Changed His Troubled World and Offers Hope for Ours.
Oh, wow.
This is the story that they won't tell you about Churchill. Churchill depended on God for everything that he did at that time in that hour. But I want you to know something. This is so powerful. When Churchill was 16 years old, God gave him a dream and a vision that London was going to need him at that very hour.
Wow.
And he said, my country is going to need me. I see a time where trouble is coming for my nation, and my nation is going to need me. My destiny is to be ready. And his friend told him, you're crazy, man. How can that be? We have one of the most peaceful times. We're living in prosperity. Our nation, it doesn't have any problems. And he
The
said,
empire
no,
was
there
all
will
over the
be
world.
a time of trouble that is coming, and I'm going to be used. And God showed me that I'm going to be the one that will lead my country into success. Listen, the hour of the watchman, the hour of the prophet is so needed today. Every church, every ministry needs to have the voice of the prophet, a watchman on the wall, foreseeing what the future is coming along. Absolutely. But I want you to know something. When our ministry is being set as an example of what's to come, the troubled time that your church is going to be facing, don't ignore it. It's not, oh, there goes Jim Bakker again. He can't get out. He can't get out of trouble, this guy. Listen, if your thinking is that way, you better straighten it up, because it has nothing to do with Jim Bakker. It has nothing to do with a personality. It has to do that the troubled time has already started in America for the persecution of a church. The only difference is we're not in Africa. We're not in the Middle East. Our type of persecution, it starts by social media attacks, by petitions being taken to take down. America has always been in the forefront of Christianity being broadcasted all over the world. Yes. And they know that if they can shut Christians down on radio, if they can shut television programs, if they can shut you down and exclude you from the media square of social media, if they can silence you there, then they know that your influence as the church will be taken away. And now that socialistic ideologies that they want to implement in our society today, the only thing that is stopping from socialist ideology coming into our community is the church.
That's true. The last bastion.
The church is stopping. Absolutely. The church is the one that is standing in their way.
As you're talking just now, Mondo, we sat and watched as a nation for 3.5 years the government crucify General Flynn. They controlled the narrative on the media. They lied and lied and lied and lied again.
Yes.
Ruined a great man, destroyed him financially. He lost his house. He is in millions of dollars of debt. That's what they can do. That's the power they have. And at the end of the day, it was all a lie. It was an attempted coup to get through him to Trump. And by doing so, they wanted to tear down and impeach a president. And while we were all in this whirlwind lies of impeachment, a little virus from China began to spread, and the government was chasing its tail in impeachment hearings while the virus was flying around the world on Chinese jets and American jets. The Chinese closed down the virus in China and didn't stop international travel, and they sent it to us as a gift, and it has ruined the economy, ruined unemployment. It has killed hundreds of thousands of people, millions around the world, while we were dancing around looking at the shiny object, impeachment, and it was all a farce. Nancy Pelosi knew that it would never pass the Senate, but she did it anyway out of pure hatred over what we stand for. Let me tell you something. They're not against Trump. Trump just happens to be their easy target. But what he believes, I believe. I believe a baby should be safe in a mother's womb. I believe a marriage between a man and a woman. I believe that the church, it was Trump that rescinded the Johnson Amendment that allowed the church to speak in a political way again that's never been done since Johnson. Because if you, as a pastor, you spoke politics, you lost your 501c status. And we are in a massive, Winston Churchill is my favorite person in history, apart from the Bible, of course. But what Churchill's genius was, he saw the big picture. I've got a book. I'm going to send this to you. There's a link you can download, and it's called The Last Lion. Write that down, Mondo. The Last Lion. And if you download it in audiobook, it's read by this amazing guy that when he speaks, when he quotes Churchill, he sounds like Churchill, and when he talks like all the other. And I mean, it's a play, but he's reading this book. It's The Last Lion. Get it. It's going to cost you $100 for 3 volumes. And I've been listening to it and re-listening to it for years. Because it's so much volume of information. But I'm telling you what this is about. There's a huge play on right now. They thought that when Obama became president, he took America socialistly more in 8 years than anyone else could ever have dreamed. Things that were unthinkable when he became president because of the panic of the financial aspect when he came into power, never let a crisis go to waste, and he turned America from a capitalistic society into a neo-socialist society. If the last election had gone the other direction, by now it would all been over. And you'd never have heard of all the stuff they'd done and all the lies and the treason that these guys were trying to commit. You never heard of Strzok, and you never heard of the cadre of people. But God turned an election. I said, my son, I says, let me tell you something. Only God could have put Donald Trump in the White House. He had the press against him. He had the Republicans against him. He had the Democrats against him. He had everybody against him. And God still gave him the victory. And we are now looking, he put in power justices that stand for conservative belief. And if he wins again, he will do it again a couple of more times and will change the direction of America for decades to come in the future. And the devil knows it. The devil knows this. And the church is whistling in the dark, just going along. We just love everybody, and we're just here to be nice to everyone, and we'll do whatever you want to do and comply with. Yes, sir. Whatever you want to do, we'll comply with. And I'm telling you now, it's time that the church rises up and says, enough. Yes. This country is not like Europe. This country was built on freedom of speech, freedom of worship, that the government should not impinge on free worship. That was not put to protect people from the church. That was put in there to protect the church from the government. And you are watching this happening, my friend. And if you don't stand for this, we'll all be sitting in the dark one day saying, what happened? When Boris Johnson in England, when he was talking about this coronavirus, he never mentioned the church. Do you know why? Because the church doesn't matter over there. The biggest concern they were wasn't with the church house meeting, it was the pub. When can we go back and get our brew? When can we go back and get our pint of beer? There was no mention of the church because the church has been washed down into and watered down into irrelevance. But in America, there are still 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal. There are still a remnant of godly people in this country. And if we get together and stand up for Jesus and stand up for this situation, we can win this thing, but it's going to take every one of you doing something.
You know something? A few days ago, I was on the phone with a former U.S. representative, and I won't mention his name. I'll keep him private. But he said this, and I quote, one of the greatest battles that evangelicals and the Christian community will be facing in the next few weeks is the religious freedom battle.
Absolutely.
This is a man that understands politics and understands behind the scenes. And he said, if you don't stand right now, you will lose the battle later. And understand one thing. We are living in a time where things are not going to get better. I'm not trying to give you doom and gloom. It's not about that. I'm trying to give you the reason why things happen is to strengthen your faith. And I want to read you a portion of scripture, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. And there shall be a time of trouble. What is trouble? In the Greek, difficulty time, time of distress, great trouble, suffering, pain, public unrest, disorder, fighting, disturbance, sickness, disease, such as never was since there was a nation. We are in the hour that the Bible talks about the birth pains.
Jesus.
Matthew 24, if you want to know where we are right now, we have entered into the birth pains of troubled times,
Yep.
and the church does not want to wake up. The church is still trying to fit into the culture.
Yep.
The church is still trying to figure out how they can be politically correct in our communities so we can stay in the good terms of public image. If you worry about your public image, you're in trouble, Pastor. You're in trouble with your church. You're in trouble with your organization, because the Bible says in Matthew that they're going to hate you. They're going to persecute you because of me.
Yep.
And when you have government officials, when you have government agencies coming after you to shut your voice down, not because of a product, is because you have power and influence over your community. And listen, we are in the greatest hour where the church has the opportunity to fight and stand and fight for their religious freedom. And if you don't begin to see in between the lines on what's really happening, on where we are biblically, you may be in a time where you're going to be surprised. And I'm afraid that a lot of you are going to shake your fist on your preacher's face and say, how come you didn't warn us about what's going on? I thought prosperity and faith was coming. Listen, when you read the whole Bible, when you read where we are right now, it doesn't get any better. The only great thing about what's happening with everything that is going on is that the king is coming back. All the signs that, the disciples asked Jesus on the Mount of Olives, Jesus, please share with us, what are the signs of your return?
Yeah.
And he said, well, there'll be wars and rumors of war. We see a lot of that, right? We see that
every
going
day.
On since the day of mankind was created.
In our
but when you see
now.
nation will rise against nation, which is ethnic groups against ethnic groups, that's what we're seeing right now. And then you see kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. We're seeing the time of trouble, the pressure that the Bible calls and talks about like never before. All this are the signs. Listen, we celebrate the birth of Jesus. We celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, but the only thing that the church doesn't celebrate is the return of Jesus, because the return of Jesus happens to have a lot of chaos in between.
That is the truth.
Listen, I'm not a pastor. I used to be a pastor. I used to be an evangelist, but I consider myself a student of the Word of God, and a student in being around mentors like Pastor Jim, Uncle Philip, Bishop Ron Webb, all these men and women of God. And listen, we are in the hour where the church will experience an awakening and revival. But what if revival and an awakening is not how you planned it? I don't know. I'm just saying.
What if? Because the older I get, the more I'm convinced that we know absolutely nothing. We know very little. We pontificate so proudly, and we act like we know what God's going to do next. And the older I'm getting, the less I know. But let me tell you,
you know what's so crazy is that the headlines are screaming, the king is coming back. The king is coming back. Every headline, every hour on the minute, it's screaming, God is, Christ is coming back soon. And when you see public unrest, it's supposed to happen. When you start seeing the marches and the looters and the protesting and our country crying out for justice and defunding the police. I mean, everything that is happening is supposed to happen in this time for this hour. This is where we intercede. This is where, the famous scripture that everyone loves to quote, if my people pray. Listen, read above that and understand that the reason why if my people pray came about is because famines and disease and all. Listen, you have to read the whole scripture in context in order to understand. Quit taking out Bible scriptures to fit in your theology. When you put it back into context, you realize the big picture is that the king is coming back. But these things must take place.
If I told you, Mondo, when the crystal ball fell up in New York City and 2020 was ushered in with great fanfare, 2020, the vision year, yay. And pastors preached sermons on vision and whoa, yay. Yeah, and here we are now. The church has been shut down for most of this year. If I'd said to you, Mondo, in 2020, there'll be no churches open in America because the government has closed them down. If I told you that there was a major city in America had its own new country in 6 blocks, if I told you that there would be looting and rioting and New York would be like a ghost town and that the world would be shaken from, I mean, people live in their little house, wherever they are, in Montgomery or in Branson, Missouri. Do you understand that this thing has stopped the world from going round? Everywhere. In Africa, stopped. In Asia, stopped. In China, everywhere. Everything stopped. Talk about a reset. And yet we still don't tie it to the fact that this is the end of the age. This is exactly what the scripture is pointing us toward.
Yes.
And we're all so caught up in our own little world that one day we're going to look and say, where's everyone else gone? And by that time, it's going to be too late. And I urge you today, if you love Jesus and if you stand for the cross and you believe that we are a family of God, that we have brothers and sisters that we are responsible for, I urge you to go to www.SaveJimBakkerShow.com, and you can sign a petition there that will counterbalance this left-wing lunatic organization that has tried to stop him. I'll never forget when Jim Bakker, people said, oh, he's selling food, he's a prepper. I'll never forget the day when Japan had the earthquake and the tsunami. And the most orderly society on earth, there is no society with such clear lines of structure as Japan. And it fell apart. And there was no gas, and there was no food. And I was at Morningside the day that happened. And Jim was sitting, and someone that you knew was in Japan. And while people were drinking water from radioactive puddles, this guy was sitting eating the food that he'd brought with him. That's what the Bible says. The government tells you now, have food prepared. And we are so against anything that affects our comfort or our perceived comfort, that instead of thinking, wow, that might be the Lord talking to me, we just get in a defensive mode and, well, that's nonsense. That's okay. But I promise you, when it's all gone, if you're a pastor, they'll be knocking on your door and saying, Pastor, why didn't you warn us? Why didn't you tell us this is going to happen? All you told us was that Jesus loves us and everything's going to be wonderful and hunky-dory and we're going to just sing and praise the Lord and enjoy ourselves on the way to glory. Let me tell you, church, listen to me. We are in the battle of the age right now. And America has been a safe haven for centuries, built on religious freedom, put together by men that loved God and feared God. And that is all slipping away, one by one. And if they can get Jim Bakker over this, they're coming for your church because you're having a play and you're charging for tickets. Or someone's going to come up and say, I want you to marry us and we're the same sex. And the church is going to say, we don't believe in that. And they're going to say, really? You've just impinged upon my rights. We're going to sue you. It is happening in Great Britain. A couple had a bed and breakfast, and these folks came and they would accommodate them in a marital bed. And they said, we're Christians, we don't believe in that. And they bankrupted them, lost their house because they didn't comply. And we stand on the Word of God. We love everybody. I'm not fighting with anyone, but I am standing for what I believe according to the Scripture. And that's what this country was founded on. And so, man, we've gone way over our hour, Mondo. But it's
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's your fault.
I get passionate. Listen, I
Oh,
get
listen,
so passionate because we are in the hour of Daniel chapter 7,
absolutely,
where they are trying to wear out the saints.
yeah,
And if they can wear you out, they can knock you off your pedestal, or they can
absolutely,
knock you off the race. But I believe we are in the hour where we are going to see a great revival. We are going to see a great awakening. But
yes.
also, we can't ignore what's happening. And there's so much to talk about. And thank you so much for letting me
Oh,
blab along
my
and
honor,
join you.
my
I'm so
honor.
proud of. I'm so proud to call you my friend, Uncle Philip. Your
I love
family, we
you.
love you.
I love you,
You
Dad.
you have
How
been
do
a
people
great friend.
now? Listen, I want you to get in contact with Mondo. If you want to bless Mondo, you can send an offering to his minister, himself. It's facebook.com/Mondo page. That's how they can get you on Facebook. Do you have a website, Mondo? Do you have a web
I
page?
don't. I don't. They can just, they
Well,
can
that's
go to Facebook, message me on Facebook. They can go to
okay.
Instagram.
Okay.
They can follow me there.
And
They
look,
can watch my show on the PTL
there
network,
you
by the
go.
way.
Look at that picture there of that handsome young man, and
Oh,
he
Lord.
he is on. He has a program called the Mondo Show on Roku and Fire TV. It's all under the PTL logo, and Jim Bakker regained even the name and the logo. This will tell you how old I am. That logo was designed by a Dutch artist that worked at PTL when they were in the furniture store. That one right there, and I was in his art studio because
Wow.
he was Dutch, and his family had lived through the war, and I loved talking to him, and
I got to show you something.
I saw that on the drawing board as it was being made. Oh my Lord, look at that. Oh my goodness gracious me. Where did you find that at, Mondo?
A friend of mine gave it to me, and it's two sermons from Dad. But look, listen, this is how sermons. No MP3, no
No,
downloads. It
no.
was straight record, and I got a record player.
I see
Let me see
it.
if I can show you my record player
I
over
see it
there.
with the two white speakers beside it. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I play this sermon. I want to tell you something. The PTL show, the PTL network was a blessing then, and we believe. Listen, I got an amazing news.
Go
We
ahead.
are getting ready to launch the first 24 hours, 7 days a week, Voice of the Prophets network
I love
that
it.
is going to have its own platform.
Yes.
And we're going to announce it in the next few days
I love it.
and let you know where you can watch the PTL network, satellite television network, for the first time since this man was knocked down and taken out. And the greatest comeback in the church history of modern day.
That's another example of restoration. That's what blows my mind. That I've watched this guy, and I mean, Mondo and I know Jim. Jim and I are very similar in our personalities. He's an incredibly shy man, and for him to be on TV, he lives on television, and the Jim that you see is who he is. But to get onto television, it's a tremendous battle for. I mean, this guy is a reluctant hero. It's funny the battles he's got to go through in his own heart just to go on. Him pulling his hat down when you first met him. That's Jim Bakker. Not talking to people. That's Jim Bakker, and to watch God restore this thing, and right at the point. Do you think it's a mistake or a coincidence that right at the point of relaunching the PTL network, like it was in the 80s, right at the point of this great last step of restoration, you should see Morningside. It is stunning. It's got a main street. It's gorgeous. Acres. People buy houses and build houses there. It's a crazy place. It's the most amazing place. They've got a chapel up on the mountain, Prayer Mountain, that would blow your mind. I mean, blow you away. And right at the point of him establishing the PTL network again, where people like me can have a voice and people like the prophets can have a voice, this all comes up. no coincidence. The fact that he stood so strongly for President Trump, no coincidence. Trust me, no coincidence. Yeah. It's all politics.
Pray for Dad. Pray for his health. Pray for
we
Mama
are
Lori.
every
Pray
day.
for them.
Yeah.
You know, this whole thing really broke his heart, and they wore him out, and he suffered a stroke.
Yeah,
and pray for a full restoration. Pray that he will come back to the program. Many people are asking, when is he coming back? Listen, if anyone that's been through a stroke, don't rush it. No. Pace yourself. No. You know, he's able to talk. He's able to move. He's able to walk around. I talk to him every day. We sit together. We pray. He gives me advice. He's still mentoring me. He's still fathering me. He's still correcting me. He's still loving me. But pray for his health. Pray for his full recovery. We believe he's going to come back greater. God is speaking to him about the times that we're in right now, and he's interceding for you. He's interceding for the church, but he's hearing from God. But in the midst of it, physically, he's exhausted. Physically, he's tired. Mentally, he's just exhausted. And we have to pray for him. You know, you have to understand something. Many of you watch Jim Bakker, and that's all you've known. But for me, for us, he's our father. He's a husband. Yep. He's a grandfather. And he's a man that feels deep. And this thing, when the false accusations came and the froze their accounts, when they came after the partners and they came after the ministry, that's what really, you know, that was the camel, the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. And pray for full restoration, and just know that he loves you. He stands with you. He's praying for you. Keep supporting our ministry. Keep standing with our ministry.
Absolutely.
This is the hour where we don't walk away. Instead, we come back, and we're gonna do it together. And listen,
stand and fight.
When you see me, when you see Mama Lori, when you see Maricela hosting, don't get discouraged. Instead, be encouraged, because the next generation is standing with the older generation, linking arms.
Absolutely.
And he's not
that's
going
important.
anywhere.
That's important to be said, Mondo, that his DNA is in so many of us, me included. I mean, I feel part of it all. And what I'm thrilled is that Lori and yourself and Marcella and others are lifting this burden and continuing, and people that are watching that love Jim Bakker and love what he's done over these decades are still supporting the ministry. And though the credit card companies have done this ridiculous thing, people are still finding ways to give. And if you want to help Jim Bakker today, you can go on to his page, or you can write him. You can write him at P.O. Box 7330 in Branson, Missouri, 65613. And by doing that today, you are helping. So 65615 is the zip code. And we're going to leave it up there for a second for you to get a hold of this. I want you to write him today and write a letter of encouragement saying, Jim, we're standing with you. This is an attack of the enemy, and he's failed every other time that he attacked you, and he's going to fail on this one again. And what happens is, when the enemy comes in, like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord raises a standard against him. And you can be the flood of heaven to say, no, sir, this is not going to happen, and not as long as I can have a voice. And by giving, the greatest thing you can do is to put prayer and faith and action together and say, I'm going to pray that this thing is thwarted and defeated in the courts, and that Jim gets back to doing what he's doing. I feel personally that if Jim Bakker were to sense and feel the surge of love and compassion from America, it would go a great way to help restore his health. Because this man has literally spent himself. I've never met a man, listen, I'm much younger than he. I'm 15, 17 years younger than he. And he will outwork me and Mondo together. He has no off switch. He just never stops. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm saying is, I believe if we can lift up his hands like they did Moses, we'll prevail in this battle. And until all this nonsense and technical stuff is sorted out, you can give, you can call. What's the number to call, Mondo, that can give by phone?
Absolutely. 1-888, I think 159. Hold on. I don't even know my own number.
Oh my Lord! I listen. When
Let
I'm
me
there, I
Hold
don't even
on.
have to look at the camera because I know it. 1-888. Is it 3?
Usually I memorize it.
Honestly, Mondo. I just
Isn't
hope
that a
Jim.
shame? You think I would know?
I hope Jim Bakker isn't watching you, brother. Or you're going to get. You're getting a phone call as soon as we go off this program. I'm telling you
Oh
now.
boy.
One
Let me
eight eight
see.
eight 988 1588.
Hey, there you go.
I saved your bacon. 1
Oh my
888
Lord.
988 1588. How could Mondo forget that easy number? And you can call that
Listen, even
number
though I
and you
say
can
it.
you can give a gift by check, a bank check over the
Yes.
phone. They'll if you call that number, the phone person will help you walk through it. And why don't you do something
Absolutely.
today
You can do an
magnificent
electronic check.
for the kingdom of God? Time has more than gone. We're half an hour into tomorrow's program. It's your fault, Mondo. I completely blame
I
you.
listen. I blame Dad. Jim Bakker goes for 2-3 hours.
Oh, is that all? That's an easy day.
Oh boy, but I love talking to you. I love you. I love your
Oh
whole
man,
family. We
I
love you
know.
guys. And on
I love
behalf
you
of
guys.
Pastor Jim and Lori, we say thank you.
Oh man, we are family. And tell Beth, Mondo has got the most beautiful woman as a wife you've ever seen in your life,
Oh,
and two of the
thank you.
most gorgeous twins, Mile and Matteo. They are delicious. Is the only way I can
Yeah.
describe them. And he married a way above himself, and his kids, thank God, they look like his wife.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you,
terrible.
Jesus. And
You're
so
terrible.
they are deliciously adorable. I love them so much, and I love you,
They
Mondo.
love you.
And you are God's man in that position right now to strengthen and lift up and build and
Thank
move
you.
this whole thing forward as we see the day approaching. Thank you for joining us. Let me give you Mondo's homepage one more time. This is his homeboy page right here. It's Facebook.com Mondo page. Mondo
That's too
page.
funny.
And get in contact with him. He'll respond back to you. Watch his show on all the different platforms that you're looking at right now on your screen, and encourage this great man of God. I love him. I have
I love you.
limitless respect for you, Mondo, because I know you behind the
respect to you.
scenes. And
I
that's a
respect you.
great
You've
deal.
done a lot for you done a lot for our generation. You've done a lot for a Christian community, and the heritage that you have experienced shall never be forgotten. And I thank people like Andrew and your whole team there to keep you going and to keep the legacy going. Your
Absolutely.
family is so important to the body of Christ and what you're doing right now. And listen, we got a lot more to talk about, a lot more
Yes, sir.
to do.
Will you come back
And
Will you
I
come back
love
with
you.
me again?
As long as you let me, yes.
Hey, my
You have to block
reputation.
2 or 3 hours. Listen, I can't do an hour. I just can't. I can't. We're
Listen,
family.
my reputation is ruined by me being friends with a former gangbanger. What can I tell you?
Oh Lord,
I
I'm sure
love
you
you
had
guys.
worse friends before.
I'm sure, but trust me, I've had worse friends. Mondo, thank you for being with us today.
I love you. God bless America and
bless
God
you.
bless the church.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I love you.
God bless you, Mondo. Isn't that wonderful? Has been a great time together. You see, you only see the front. You only see the front part. You really get to see behind the scenes. And in this situation, with this nonsense that's going on just now, I know I've been behind the scenes. We've watched the programs together and critiqued what they said was happening and it wasn't happening. And I'm sure that you'll prevail, but the whole point is if they can choke you to death while you're prevailing, they've won on the other side. So it's important that we stand together. And whether you're a Methodist or a Baptist or a spiritual believer or a Roman Catholic, this is your church that they're coming after. And we all need to stand up together. And let me say one more time, they have stopped this credit card transactions right now because of this craziness. And that program needs your help. And you can contact Jim Bakker. You can write a check today to the Jim Bakker Show, P.O. Box 7330, Branson, Missouri 65615. Or you can call and give by bank transaction on the phone. They'll help you work through it. And it's 1-888-988-1588. And it's all in the comment bars below. And I want you to do something today. Don't curse the darkness. Light a light. And that's one way to do so. Tomorrow, we have a great friend of ours, Paul Greer, back with us. He was with us a few weeks ago, and so many folk were blessed by him. He pastors Trinity Assemblies of God in Indiana, and you'll be blessed to meet him tomorrow. Once again, my great thanks to Mondo, and we pray that God will give the victory. He is going to give the victory because he has conquered it through the name of Jesus. Thank you for being with us today. We love you. God bless you. Bye-bye.